Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski.
Today on the podcast, we're in California with someone who has a 30-year running career, national championships, Olympic finals, must have some great genetics because there's dad, brothers, husband, who all were elite runners. Today, welcome on the podcast, Ruth Wysocki. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Ruth, let's tell everybody your origin story from age 10 when you began running. How did you get into running?
My dad was fourth in the California State Meet in 1946 in the 880, which at age 10, I don't know that I was really aware of that, but he had started doing some running again after having 4 children, a full-time job, and loving to play pickup basketball. The story goes that he was starting to have some blood pressure issues, putting on a little weight, and that my mom was in a panic that she was going to be a single stay-at-home mom with 4 kids. And so she said that if he didn't get in shape, he couldn't play basketball anymore. That's the family story. So he started to run a little. And my amazement now is with no internet, no coach, no whatever. And I don't know how he found out that there was this talk of starting masters running for men over 40, just the men, no women. That sort of became a goal to get in some kind of shape. So he took his computerized running tables book and went for some runs and connected with a group called the Seniors Track Club, and off he went. So at age 10, growing up in Azusa in Southern California, our local community recreation department, in the summers, they would open up the Citrus Junior College Stadium. The rec leaders would be out there. I doubt that any of them really knew much, but they showed us how to use starting blocks and do the long jump. And then they'd have these little all-comer meets every Friday. I think we just ran the 50 and the 100 and maybe did the long jump. I don't know, but maybe we ran the 220, but nothing further than that. After this series of meets and winning ribbons and such, my dad saw that there was a local club that was bringing up, group to these meets. Given that I really didn't train, I was keeping up and beating most of them. So he found out how to sign me up for the Covina Valley Vikings, and off we went.
When did you really have success that looked like this might be something that's going to happen before you're out of school at a big level?
At a small level to begin, back then we trained 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and did whatever it was we did. But I did learn that I did love to compete. And they entered us in an AAU age group meet. They decided to put me in the 880. So hilarious. In practice, the day before that, we ran an 880 and I ran 301. Anyway, I think by then I had 11. But anyway, went to this meet and finished third. I'm trying to remember what I ran in that first one. I want to say 244-ish, but got one of those little AAU medals. They looked like the little shield, and I was hooked. Like, when can we do this again? In my second meet, we went up to Ventura. The girl who beat me in the first one, by the way, found out I was supposed to be in the novice race, and it was a mistake that I was even in the main race. But went up there. The girl who won the week before wasn't there. Off we went, and I ran. And as I finished, I heard the announcer excitedly say, "It's a new national record, 2:33, I think." I had no idea what a national record was or that anybody even cared, but that was pretty cool too. That early success just made me want to keep at it. Almost right away, people were like, "Oh, you're going to be in the Olympics one day." And I'm like, "Oh, geez, you guys have no clue." That idea of actually doing that probably didn't come about until I was about 18.
Let's talk about what it was like. Your dad being a competitive athlete in high school, knew about equipment and training. What equipment did you get? And when was there a team in the school that you were actually on? Because I don't think there were girls' track teams then in starting.
There was not. In Southern California, we're in the CIF is the organization. There was no CIF for girls at that time, but we did have this club system, the Long Beach Comets, the Rialto Roadrunners, who I ended up running with. We had meets all the time. We just loved to race. And we did our thing and didn't even really think about the fact that the school didn't have it to offer, but the club system was there. And after that first year with the Covina Valley Vikings, we hit cross country season. Cross country for age 10 and 11 was 3/4 of a mile. We went to some meets and I was doing very well. And the coach from the Rialto Roadrunners, Dave Japs, we ran in what was the district meet at Griffith Park. I won. The Rialto Roadrunners won the team. And Dave Japs came to my dad and said, "Are you going to the state meet?" We're like, "What's a state meet? What, huh?" The meet was up in Sacramento. My dad came up with money for 2 plane tickets for he and I. Budgets were tight. We flew up that morning, ran the race, and flew back because we didn't have money to do hotel or anything. I won the race. The Rialto Roadrunners won the team. Dave Japs comes to my dad and says, "Hey, she should be running in the national championships." And we're like, "Huh?" We go, "When is that? Where is that?" I think it was 2 weeks following that Saturday after Thanksgiving in Frederick, Maryland, which when you're in Azusa, California, that might as well be on the moon. There was just as much chance of going. Dave persisted and said, "Look, if you can come up for the money for a plane ticket and some meal money, we've got rooms, we've got places. I think we're being privately housed most of the time and stuff. But she can come with us. We've got chaperones. We've got a whole group. She won't need to pay for the hotel. We'll just put her in there." So my dad went to the school district where he worked and some local clubs, and they pitched in and got me a plane ticket. As a mother now, I almost can't even fathom that an 11-year-old girl was allowed to travel with this group of people that we really didn't know. And I won the race, and the Rialto Roadrunners won the team. And we decided we should run for the Roadrunners. They were about an hour away from us. At that point, my dad became my coach. And on we went to the next phase.
We can jump through all the way between that and high school and see just what stories come up. You had great success winning cross country, state champion in the 400 and 800. Were there races longer than 800 in the school system by the time you graduated?
Yes, by the time I graduated, but my junior year of high school, I got a call from Chuck Bibas, who ran the LA Track Club, and said, "Would you like to run for the LA Track Club?" And I'm like, "You're too far away. That's not possible." And he said, "There's a splinter group out in Claremont near you, coached by Vince Reel. His wife was Chi Chang, who was a world-class sprinter. Marilyn Neufeld, who held the world record in the 440. Joanne, whose last name I can't remember, ran the hurdles. And Vince was the coach at Claremont Men's College. Harvey Mudd had a combined program in the Claremont colleges. So my junior year of high school, I actually trained at the Claremont colleges. Into the season, it was stated that there would be a CIF championship for girls. Not the state meet yet, but what's the equivalent of now their masters meet. At that point, you were not allowed to run 2 distance races in the same meet. So running the mile and the 880 was out of the question. The 880 was definitely my better event. So we decided, and again, this just seems insane now, especially because I really did not run that much, to run the 440 and the 880. So the 440 had about 15, 20 minutes rest while they ran the 100 and bit them into the 880. And I did win them both, but I don't know what I was thinking that made me even attempt something so insane. But it worked.
That was before Alberto Wantarita did it. Yeah, that's a double that
Yeah.
is not common even again to this day.
No, and certainly not in a meet where you have one event in between the two and you probably run a massive about 25 miles a week. Anyway, that was that desire to compete, and just the gun goes off and you just determination, motivation. I don't know, does it. Vince Reel then retired. So going into my senior year of high school, I was without a coach in the team. And my dad went to the high school and spoke to the coach, who again, then it was only a boys team. I had two brothers that had already run there, and asked the coach, would you coach Ruth? And he goes, she can be on my boys team. And okay, I'll just be one of the guys. So ran cross country, stayed on varsity, stayed in the top 7, went into track, ran a couple of races, and then got a letter from CIF that, because that was going to be the first year there was a state meet, by the way, and that I was out because I trained and raced with boys. That's a big no-no. And the argument, we don't even have a girls' team, blah, blah, blah. And this is hilarious now in 2024. But basically, CIF's answer was, okay, you can continue where you are as a boy, or you can find another coach, train somewhere else, and we'll forgive the boys' races you ran, and you can run. And it didn't take much thinking to feel like by the time I find a coach, find me to run with, and this is stupid, I'm going to be a better athlete by continuing to do what I do. So basically, for totally different reasons that are happening in this day and age, CIF said, are you going to be a boy or a girl? And I said, in this case, I guess I'm a boy.
Let me ask you about that then. How was the reaction of your peers to your success outside the school and then your crossing the gender lines in sport? How were you perceived? I know you were also busy with music and other activities as a student, a very diverse life. How was that
You know,
reaction in your relationship?
the guys I ran with, my teammates were great. They're my friends. And I think there were a couple of other girls that kind of came along and I think really appreciated the trailblazing of, if she can do it, coach, can we do it too? And Dale Mitek, God bless you for being open to do something and let these girls come along for the ride, so to speak. I had a couple of funny encounters with certain guys that I beat that weren't always very happy about it. But for the most part, I think people knew that I was serious about my racing and I did have a reputation as a runner. They were very encouraging.
Your personality, I'm curious about how it plays into this determination and the competitiveness with your training through the years of running twice a day, not a lot of mileage. Your mileage was more the Sebastian Coe feel than the Arthur Lydiard, and running twice a day. Much motivation did you need? Were you just, I'm going to get up and run morning and night when you were doing that with no issues at all?
I guess you just get into a routine and you do what you do. I did not run twice a day until after my freshman year of college. I actually didn't train on the weekends. I didn't run over the summer. I think the difference being the desire to compete. And that when you got on the track or you got into a quality workout, it was big time quality. And the easy was easy, the quality was the quality. But when I went to the University of Redlands after high school for 1 year, not the right place for me. That's a whole nother story. When I let my folks know that I was dropping out, I felt like I was wasting time and my parents' money who were paying for this education, that I wasn't fitting in, didn't quite know what I really wanted to do. So I said, I'm not taking your money to do this anymore. I'm coming home. I'll get this figured out. Unbeknownst to me, much like my senior year of high school, my dad went down to the local junior college where Vince O'Boyle was the coach. Again, all males, no females. He walked into Vince's office and talked to him. Vince knew who I was as a runner or what I'd done, and asked Vince, would you be willing to coach her? He says, my daughter is dropping out of school. She's coming home. I feel like she's floundering. She doesn't know what she wants to do next, whatever. And I'd like to see something stay constant in her life. She likes to run. Would you do this? And Vince said, sure. I find out years later, then, of course, as my dad walked out the door, Vince put his head on his desk and said, what the hell did I just agree to do? What do I do with a female runner? And much like my high school coach, the absolute best thing, make
Wow.
me one of the guys and we'll figure out what you can handle and what you can't. And again, I had just a fabulous group of guys that accepted me being around, being with them. I did not want to be an embarrassment to them. So I worked really hard. I didn't want them to resent that I was out there, and it worked.
Let me ask you two things about that time. The first one is, had you ever faced anything like that challenge of, oh, I'm a little bit lost here and this isn't working?
Not really. I led a pretty charmed life. And I actually, my senior year of high school, my game plan, like you mentioned earlier, I was also very involved in music. I played the violin, I played the piano, I was in the choir. I ran. I don't know. Again, how do you do all those things? I don't know. It
Yeah,
happens.
looking back, we
Yeah.
all say, how did
Yeah.
we ever do all those things?
Exactly.
Yeah.
My intention, because like I said, there was no NCAA for women, there was not really the opportunity to run. And it was this, didn't really think, do I want to? Do I not want to? It was let's move on with life. My desire was to be an elementary school teacher. And I was accepted and planning to go to Westmont up in Santa Barbara area. And 2 weeks before school was to start, I get a phone call from Vince Reel. He says, I've come out of retirement. They're asking me to coach at the University of Redlands. Would you like to come run at Redlands? I didn't even hesitate. And bless my parents, whatever deposits they lost, I don't know. And off I went. And choosing a college just so that you can run is not the best choice. It's a beautiful school. It just wasn't the best choice for me. And when track started, Vince was basically a sprint coach who I learned a lot from. But from Christmas break on, we were on the track running intervals every day. So not only was I not totally doing great at school, I'm a only girl. All of a sudden, I have roommates borrowing my clothes before they ask, all these things and these adjustments. And made the mistake of coming home almost every weekend because I wasn't happy. Had I just toughed it out, who knows what would have happened? By May, I was, no, yeah, I knew before second semester I would not come back for a second year, but I wanted to run track. Yeah, I stuck it out, but it just, like I said, it was just not the place for me. It was not the program for me. By May, I don't think I even wanted to run anymore. I was tired of it. And so
You had success winning at that, was it C3 2A championship cross country?
in the
So,
junior college, yeah.
yeah, the junior college championship, you had success. I wanted to ask for looking ahead to later in your career, running against all the top runners in the US and the world. Since you started so young, when did you first run into somebody who is a name we'd recognize that you would compete against later?
The first one, who not somebody I competed against, but in 1968, when I went to Maryland and ran that cross country meets, the women's race was won by Doris Brown. And I knew enough to know that this woman had just gotten a medal in the Olympics, and I was in awe of her. I believe Francie LaRue ran in that meet. There were some others, but Doris was just like, oh my God. And she was so nice to me. And we became good friends over the years, but she was just, to me, incredible. Then being in Southern California, yeah, there were a number of people along the way because we would run at Mount Sac relays and some of that. It became more so after I left Redlands and was training at Citrus because I was running in meets that were of more importance.
You talked about at some point with someone that you didn't always win early in the season. How did that work into your training plan and your psyche?
I think, yeah, I was just on a Zoom call the other day with a whole group of runners. And we had a similar conversation. And I think I realized I'm just not somebody who can do base training, jump in a meet and do something. Steve Scott, who's another dear friend, like he'd go run these amazing indoor races and he wasn't even really doing track work. That just didn't work for me. What we did find is, I guess my phrase my husband would use sometimes is race myself into racing shape. And we realized when I first started training with Vince, we would do long intervals early on, mile repeats, 1,200-meter repeats, that kind of thing, and work our way to quicker. And came to realize that really I needed to start with some quick stuff, get some tempo in my legs before I tried to do the other. Otherwise, I was just slogging it out to get it done until we got to where we could run faster. So we would incorporate some shorter things, but my first races weren't always fabulous. A lot of times my opener, so to speak, was at Mount Sac. And I can remember a few times not being out of it, but being second, third, whatever, and having people crow about they've got my number now and they're better than me. And okay, see you in a couple weeks, which is another motivation to get it in gear.
Let's talk about your first Olympic trials or first national championship when you finished dead last. It was not something you look at as a bad thing, I think.
I sure did at the time. It was utter humiliation. But when I started training with Vince at Citrus, this is 1975, and this is what got me into really training for the first time consistently and running. Over that first summer, the guys would have me come along and go run. And so I actually had a base going into the season. But one of my first conversations with Vince, he asked me what my goal was. And that was a tough one for me because I just wanted to run. I don't know, nothing specific. I don't know that I wanted to be held accountable. I didn't want to set a goal and maybe not get it and not be able to deal with that or get hounded or nagged about it. I don't know, or told, are you kidding me? You can't do that. But basically, Vince said that you come to me, you want me to coach you, you want me to take you from point A to point B, but what is point B? I know where point A is, but what is it that we're going toward? And I think it was more his goal than mine, but it sounded good. The goal was to try to qualify for the Olympic trials. My PR at the time was 207.6. And I'm trying to remember exactly how it worked because to have your weight paid to the trials, I needed to run 203.9, which I'm guessing was probably the Olympic standard in 76. So the goal was to run that 203.9 and make it to the Olympic trials. In the West Coast relays, I ran 203.87, which I ran to 208, 203.8, you ran to 203.9. So I was in the trials. Vince had the bright idea because back then the nationals were separate from the trials. The nationals, the plan was to run the 1500 to try to qualify for both the 800 and the 1500 because one was at the beginning of the trials, one was at the end. And if you make both, you get to stay for the whole Olympic trials. I want to say fourth in the nationals in the 1500 and qualified for the trials. Off we went to Eugene. Vince and I were a couple of rubes, just one step at a time, learning what this whole process was. We stayed in the dorms. Two tough things. One, I have some allergies, so the hay fever thing in Eugene wasn't great. And my room in the dorm was on the second floor, and it was up and down the stairs, up and down the stairs. I didn't live in a 2-story house. I think I beat myself pretty good going up and down the stairs and up and down the stairs. So we ran the 800. The first round, there were the exact number of gals in the first round that they needed for the semi. So much like, what was it, the women's hurdles this year?
Yeah.
Everybody's in the semi.
Yeah, they just jogged.
Yeah, but you have to run because your place and time determines lane assignments and stuff in the semi. Ran the semi, made it to the final. And that had been the goal, to make it to the trials and then adjust that goal to make it to the final. Just at that point, like I said, probably walking up the stairs too many times, running heats, next day running the semifinal, day off, hit the final, and There was just nothing. I wanted to, but I remember, and I just looked this up recently. I think next to the last was about 205, 206, and I jogged in at 212. I mean, it was, as I'm coming onto the straightaway, I was humiliated, embarrassed. Oh my God. My goal was to make the final, and I'm DFL. This is the most humiliating experience of my life. I did run the 1500. By the end of the week, I was really knackered. I didn't make it out of the first round, which Tom Sturrock pointed out later. That's the only time I didn't make a final, whether it was nationals, Olympics, world championships, whatever. I always made the final. Didn't always run well, but I always made the final. By the time I left Eugene, my mindset had totally changed to I wasn't humiliatingly last. I was eighth in the United States. And Madeline Manning was up there. Surely she's got tired. Who knows if other people will change events who'll still be around. And then it was like, wait a minute. By 1980, it's very remote, but there's a chance.
But did you make any friends and relationships from that time in Eugene that you still have?
I did. Many of them were coaches that were Vince's buddies and have stayed very close with all of them over the years. We just became close with Sue Vigil, who is in New Mexico. Sue was a good friend. Cindy Poor, Judy Graham, some of those Cinder gals, mostly because of their coach, Augie. And you go to these meets and you tend to run into the same people all the time. If I look at who's on the list, a lot of them I would still call friends today.
Nice. We'll jump around. You're well known for beating Mary Decker twice and in a couple different events. What was your approach when you were the underdog, but you knew you were right there? Let's talk about that 800 meters.
I'll go back to the verse. 13 years old, about to turn 14, and we're running a mile race at Golden West College. Mary was 12. I was about to turn 14. This is going to be my last race in that 12, 13 age group. And we were running the mile. My dad was my coach at the time. He said, everybody lets her just run away. They don't challenge her. She takes off, but if you notice, the pace slows down. But by then, she's so far ahead. And I find that with girls a lot, having been around high school girls. Oh, I can't pass that person. They're better than me, or they're my friend, or whatever. And things were a little different. But my dad challenged me to stay with Mary and to push her at a time when she wouldn't be expecting it. And that was to go at the start of the third lap, really push that third lap, which I did. And anyway, long story short, I ended up winning. Mary was second. And I remember that feeling when it was over, the way her coach, her mother, and everybody attacked her at the end. I remember having that feeling like, we'll run again and you can win. It's okay. It's not that important. And these people are treating you horribly, which of course doesn't make me feel good like winning. So that was number one. Then in my year at Redlands, into the season, we went to a meet up in Bakersfield, and a similar thing. Vince Reel said, if you're with her with 200 to go, you can beat her. The problem is being with her with 200 to go. And that was my 207.6 PR where I beat Mary. And she was coming back off an injury. It wasn't like maybe her finest hour. Then we hit 1978 Nationals.
This one, there's no excuses for anybody. Everybody was injury free and at their best. Yeah.
Yes. Coming back from injury, running well, and being the underdog's a cool thing. You got nothing to lose. Over the years, whether it was my dad, Vince Reel, later Vince O'Boyle, if you're with her, you can beat her. You just have to stay with her. The funny thing, in 76, 77, 78, we actually trained to run the 1500. When it would come time to make a choice at a big meet, my comfort zone was the 8, and I'd always chicken out on the 15 and run the 8. Yeah, that was one of those, you got nothing to lose. Stayed close. Those haunting voices in my head, 200 to go, you can do it. Not really expecting that it might happen, and it did. Yeah.
Did you notice a change in the reaction of Mary's team towards her, or was that still something you noticed?
I didn't really notice at that point. Of course, now we're adults and mommy isn't on the side of the track, and that's a little different. And I think on I can't speak for her, but I think on her part, obviously, she's used to running away, hide, and winning. But at the same time, I think she had to know she was on a comeback situation and getting out there again.
Winning that race at the national level, then, how did that change what you saw in goal setting? Were you then able to set these higher, more specific goals?
Yeah, I think so. I think trying to think of what phrase would describe it. All or nothing sometimes. And again, being the underdog when you have nothing to lose, I tended to have a harder time maintaining that. After the trials in 76, 77 didn't go as well during the track season. I was training at Citrus at that point. In that spring, summer, Vince said that there were some girls who ran at Arcadia High School that had come to him asking him if he would consider starting a girls' team at Citrus. Of course, Vince always says yes. When somebody needs him, he says yes. There were 3 girls that came from Arcadia, and I believe they all ran 220 or better in the 800. And they had a friend who ran, but that's all you could say. She's our friend and she runs. So Vince was, hey, Ruth, if you were to come and roll and take 12 units, you'd be our 5th. I mean, we need 5 people.
On 15th date.
I'd be number 5, but I'd be the 5th that would make it possible.
You were helping overcome another barrier in women's sports. You needed to get a 5th runner to make a
Yes.
competitive team.
I got married in December of 76 to a person we can forget now. But I was working full time. I worked as a clerk typist for the Azizan School District, typing all the purchase orders. I would work out earlier in the morning and meet Vince after work. And we had just bought a house. And I'm like, Vince, you guys, if I can work it out and get you the 12 units, will you do it? After everything he'd done for me, I can't say no. It turned out to be a good thing. After the trials in 76, the year 77 hadn't gone that well. And yeah, this was a new motivation of something to do. It worked out well. I won the cross country twice. Cross country, we were second in the state meet both times, second time by 1 point, which was disappointing. On the track, I won the 800 and the 1500 both years. But in 78, that really gave me the springboard of where to race, what to do. And yeah, it made a big difference.
Of course, the U.S. did not compete in 1980 Olympics. So let's talk about through the 70s in terms of the changes that you saw with equipment, facilities that you were running on, maybe the disappearance of dirt and cinder tracks and the shoe changes. What was that going on for you during that decade?
I know in 76, it was interesting being at the trials and people giving you shoes, which was pretty amazing. And Adidas had come out with a spike. One thing I remember was because back then we did race on dirt a lot, and West Coast Relays was on dirt. Up my track I trained on was dirt. Mount Sac was still dirt. These shoes were so amazing, but they were made for the all-weather track. The material, whatever it was that was other than the spike plate, if you walked in the grass in them, it would get all caught up in there and you'd have to pick it out. But I remember, having shoes that were like, wow, this is really something different. There were definitely more choices of what to wear, especially training shoes where we train in the old Tiger Marathons. Wafer racing shoes now have more cushion than what we ran in, but it's what we did. Often if I was on an all-weather track, the shoes came off altogether. Like, why do you need shoes if you're on this all-weather track? But yeah, got to see quite a few changes uniform-wise, as opposed to a lot of the polyester and stuff that was hot. When I was at Citrus, I actually made my own shorts to get that bun hugger thing, whatever, instead of the dolphin shorts. I don't know. Seemed okay at the time. But yeah, watching that progress of choices. And of course, I ended up working for Sub 4, but Sub 4 coming along with the shorts that actually had the built-in liner and the nylon tricot fabrics. Yeah, things got better all the time.
Let me ask you a couple more questions. Did you have Addis stars? Do you remember those? Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
I
that's the
did.
one. I ran it.
Even
I
made a
ran. I
bit.
ran in those for a couple months.
Yeah.
Now, what about your plans to be a school teacher up through this point? Had any of that gotten into the program? You were working in purchasing at the school, not being a school teacher. How were you balancing that early ambition?
In this day and age, it probably sounds funny to people, but back then, I had dropped out of school. I had come back. I was working full time, bought a house. I was married. I was living what I thought was my happily ever after. And I just, at that point, I had a job. I was running. Life was good. I didn't feel any desire or need to go back to school or pursue it. Did my 2 years at Citrus, but not with any goal of taking it anywhere. Just was getting on with life.
Cool. What happened with you when the Olympic boycott was announced? And did that change your outlook of your running career, then looking forward for another set of years?
And 1978 was a very good year. 1979, not as good. Coming into 1980, if I remember right, I believe I had the qualifying time for the trials, but I developed some plantar fasciitis. And in trying to run through that and everything else, when the boycott was called, I just copping a bad attitude. Like, yeah, you do all this work and some guy can just say, yeah, never mind, get to. And my foot hurt. So it was just, okay, let's take a break. So I did. I was working for Sub 4 Clothing at the time. We had moved to Orange County. And so I was working there. It was fun. It was all good, and made some connections with the people at New Balance and started doing some things with them. Not a whole lot, but they were giving me shoes and a little bit of money. And off I went. But I was influenced by people that convinced me that I wasn't running enough mileage. After the trials in 80, all recovered, feeling better, everything else, started running and determining that what I really needed to do was run more miles. And more miles became more miles and more miles until my knee said, no more miles. I felt like in 81 in the spring, I was in fantastic shape, strength wise, like excited, looking forward to now I'm going to show y'all what I could do. I wasn't a fluke in 78. I can do this. And my knee started hurt. It was a tendonitis issue, pretty much, but ended up having an arthroscopy. We had access to the Curlin Job Clinic. Robert Curlin was my doctor, and Frank Job did the arthroscopy. And they went in, took a look around. I remember going back a week later for the follow up, waiting to hear what they fixed and be ready to go. And Curlin told me that he said, the back of your kneecap should look like an elephant's tusk. Yours looks like crab meat. And it's just wear and tear. There's nothing to fix. We didn't fix anything. There's nothing to fix. It's just not good. Really, your only hope is you need to take an extended amount of time off, not run, not cross train, not like hope that Mother Nature heals it. But there are some people who have more heart, desire, willingness to push themselves and everything else than their body is capable of holding up to. And you might very well be one of those people. Now it's devastating. The only thing more devastating being I went home and my husband told me he didn't want to be married anymore. So
What a
at
year.
20, here I am. Yeah. And my ex, actually, the statement was, there's always something wrong with you. You get hurt. This happens, that happens. I need to be around successful people and you're not.
Sorry.
Karma got him.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Wow. Then what was your outlook? What did you think was in your future?
My thought at that point, I actually got to not run for a while. And Charlie Flanagan at New Balance said, hey, Ruth, here's the deal. Why don't you come back to Boston? It's got to be tough. You've always lived in Southern California. And now with what you're going through, I can only imagine what it feels like. People are looking at you, judging you, whatever. Why don't you just escape? Come back here. My brother has us an apartment building. There's an extra room back off the kitchen you can have. We'll find some things for you to do at New Balance. Just getaway. So I did. And I drove back there with Terry Drake, who now is working with Wysocki. He drove with me because he wanted to run Salamis and couldn't afford the plane ticket. So he helped me drive my car. Got back there, and I ended up staying about 3 months. After Dennis and I split, I had a good friend. His name was Tom Wysocki. And Tom was coming off of a long-term relationship. We were just good friends. He had gone to Europe to race. When he was done racing, he says, "Hey, I'm going to stop in Boston and see ya." Okay. So he came to Boston. He was there for about a week, and we realized this might be a little more than friends. So we had the long distance thing going on for a while. And here we are, built up a bit of a wall that was like, I love to run. I can jump in a road race now and then. And of course, Tom was racing well. And sometimes I could go to a race that he'd been invited to, and we'd get a weekend away or, whatever. And was content.
That's about the time after the money started coming in.
Yes.
Was prize money for Tom and or you at any of those races?
Yes. He was working at Sub 4 and getting shoes and stuff and making a little prize money and working for the rest of it. I worked in a running shoe store for a while, but then I worked for an electronics company. And I had very slowly built back running. And that was when I told myself, I don't know where I came up with the number, but that I'd never run more than 60 miles a week. That was it. I will not run 60.5 miles, 60 cap. That's it. So I was back to working full time, and I was going for a run in the morning before work and going for a run after work, and just happy that I could run. But I was determined that I was never going to take the risk again of being in really good shape and having the rug ripped out from under me. And now I'm in my mid-20s. I'm done. I'm getting too old for this. So going into 84, it actually was Tom who said, I have an idea. He said, they're adding the 3,000 meters in the Olympics. And of course, because you're now 27 and too old and slow to run the 800 anymore, you should try to qualify for the Olympic trials. You got this new chance, 3,000 meters. And it's like, you're nuts. No. And he said, now look, here's the deal. He had a way better chance of making the team than I did going into 84. We were racing well. Things were coming along. And he said, you enjoy sometimes being able to go to these races with me and all that. At that point, there weren't that many husband and wife combos.
Yeah.
And he said, we could be a husband and wife team that both qualified for the trials. That would make us marketable. A husband and wife, they both qualify for the trials. We'd be marketable, and maybe you'd get invited along to come with me some more often.
Right.
They talked me into it. So I said, got in touch with Vince, and yeah, sure, let's go. And I went out. The qualifying time for the 3,000 was 9:15 flat. And I forgot what the first one I ran was. It was not 9:15 flat. And I went to Mount Sac and I ran 9:15.4. And it was so hard for me to do that. And I didn't like running that many laps anyway, that I was like, I don't have 0.4 of a second more. No, that hurt. I didn't like it. I can't. And so the next week we went out and ran a 1,500 meter race. And I ran 4:13 and change. And it was just a small meet, kind of time trial, whatever, at Cal Poly. And all of a sudden, I'm qualified for the trials in the 1,500. And thank God Almighty, I don't have to run the 3,000 anymore.
Ruth qualified for the Olympic trials again. What happens next? Come back for episode 2. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.